Yes?
How would you evaluate the work of Lon Tinkle? Did he do well?
I felt like when I read that biography, I didn't get a real sense of who Dobie was, and that's part of why I wanted to write this book. I felt like we did not have that. I think Lon was very close to Dobie, maybe even closer to Bertha, and I think maybe he just didn't have the distance for perspective in a way to some of those events, and I think that, he was guarded in some ways, and I think I'd heard that Lon maybe not have been in the best of health at that time either. I think he didn't live long past that, so you know. Oh, Bertha, and I didn't talk much about her today, but one of the things I didn't see in Lon Tinkle's biography really is Bertha's story. When she and Dobie met in college, they were both writers. They both wanted to make their way as artists, and they had a very mutually supportive relationship in many ways. And Dobie did everything he could really to promote her career. He would talk her up to editors, and she would have a newspaper column on gardening and so forth. He would talk her up to publishers. And at some point, she did not have enough success, and she kind of walked away from that and really contented herself to be a first-class gardener and to try to help his writing. One of the reasons Dobie doesn't read as well today is because he was writing for people who were used to hearing oral stories, and so he translated those to paper, and they read kind of like oral stories they're being told. As the years go by, we're not used to hearing storytellers around the campfire. We kind of lose that immediacy in a way. Bertha knew that was a problem, and so she tried very hard to corral his writing, to give it structure and all of that, and they fought a lot over those issues until finally she just said, "Okay, Frank, it's your book." But she gave him a lot of help in a lot of ways, and you can see that in the manuscripts that we have too, the evidence of her editing. And so, hi, Kathy. Yes.
I haven't finished your book yet, but I'm reading it. I have this funny little perspective about Dobie because I read his Columbia Diary, and so I only know him as this young man in a way. And I was kind of struck by the little statement you made about the blinkers coming off in terms of J. Frank Dobie. And I'm curious about something, and maybe we'll discover this later as I read your book, or do you happen to know? When he was at Columbia, you know how you said, well, he went to Broadway. Well, that made it sound like he did these risque Broadway. No, he went to see the most famous British actors of Shakespearean quality is what he was doing. And he wrote a whole lot about, he fell in love with various actors and actresses, really very sophisticated kinds of things for the time. But I wonder, because then of course his lifelong interest was in folklore. Not that there has to be a distinction between those two things, the oral tradition goes with Shakespeare as well. But I wonder if he ever then went on to explore more about, the sort of serious theater that he did as a columnist.
I think that's a good question. I think the experience there really affected him because he knew a lot of the shows that he was watching. He knew the stories because he had read the books. And when he saw these actors playing these parts and just completely remaking it and owning those stories, that's when I think that's when he thought to himself, the story belongs to whoever tells it best. And that's really what he did with his folklore. When he's out talking to people, he would get a great version of a story from somebody that might have a little chronology wrong or a couple of details missing that somebody else might have, but their work has flaws too. He would sort of take all of that and do kind of a form of alchemy to retell those folk tales and make them the best possible version. So I think that may be how that affected him. So, anybody else?
How much creativity were there? How much of his creativity is in those folk tales?
That's a good question. That's the question people asked at the time. Catherine Ann Porter, I think, dismissed Dobie as a mere chronicler. And Dobie, I think he's like a lot of people from Texas who want to make it look like it's kind of easy and be laid back, and they're not the anguished artistes, wrenching blood out of their veins in order to write. And so Dobie at first acted like it was just, I'm just telling these stories for you guys. And then when people started kind of being a little critical of, maybe there's not that much art here, then he took steps to explain to people, He would say things in his introductions like, I have a feeling I know far too much about these stories than the average reader would be able to comprehend, and so therefore I'm distilling these, and how much of an artist I am, others must judge. But he would make a point for people to know how much work he had gone through to get those. And certainly, I think that, reading the story in Dobie's book and then going out and talking to somebody firsthand, I think the story in Dobie's book is far superior, and there certainly was an art to that. Yeah. Yes, Ray?
Didn't he, unlike most male Anglo-Texans at the time, bother to learn Spanish and something in Mexico and spend some time down there?
I think that's a good question. And Dobie's Spanish is probably a lot like those of us who just have, just have some block where we're just not good with foreign languages. He tried really hard, and he did learn a lot of Spanish. He grew up on a ranch in the South Texas in the brush country. His dad was the rancher, and they had many Mexican-American workers there. And Spanish was, the language these people spoke. And Dobie, you would think that he would learn it, but his parents were, this is an example of what it was like at that time. His parents said, absolutely not. You're not going to learn Spanish. That's the language of the servant class, of the labor class. You're going to learn English. And so he was actively dissuaded from learning Spanish at that time. That's, those issues of language are something we've been dealing with in Texas for over 100 years now. But he certainly tried to learn Spanish, and he spent a lot of time in Mexico doing that, and he could get by. He probably spoke in present tense, but he could get by pretty well. Yes?
In all of your things that you've read, does he refer a lot to the liberated mind?
Did he?
Did you find that in his writing, the liberated mind?
No, I think you see elements of that in the way that he was really.
I have this pamphlet, Storytellers I Know,
Uh-huh.
and he's talking about a man named Santos, a man that tells his stories,
Uh-huh.
and he said he has a liberated mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Santos was an example of what Dobie would say about, I think he said that it's a common observation of mine that the simple goat herders, so-called simple goat herders, are far more intelligent than many doctors of philosophy, and far more relevant for that matter. So, yeah. Yes. Probably some part of myself. It's a collection of his personal essays about his life, and has a lot of wonderful writing. Dobie is really interesting because he became a stronger writer the older he got. He's really kind of inspirational in a lot of ways, is for those of us getting a little older in life. But he continued to develop and improve. And but Tongues of the Mani is one many people like too, his journey into Mexico. So, anybody else? Well, thank you all. Appreciate you coming.